Good evening. Under the southern sky, where the air hangs thick with moss and memory, there are places that never truly rest. Places where history still whispers, in the walls, in the mirrors, and in the quiet between heartbeats. Tonight we travel to St. Francisville, Louisiana, a town older than most maps, and a house that has watched centuries go by. They call it the Myrtles Plantation. Some say it is one of the most haunted homes in America. Others say it is simply a place that remembers too much. In this story, we won't chase ghosts. We'll listen to the echoes of the people who lived and the silence of those who never left. This is Southern Sky Bedtime Stories, and tonight you're listening to The Myrtles Plantation, the mirror that traps souls. In the quiet town of St. Francisville, Louisiana, a 200-year-old house stands beneath the shade of ancient oak trees. Long strands of Spanish moss hang from their branches, swaying gently in the damp southern air. The locals know the house by name, the Myrtles Plantation. It was built in 1796. The walls are white, the verandas wide, and the wood bears the scent of the swamp it came from. For visitors, it is another piece of Louisiana's history. For others, it is something more. A place where the past has not entirely gone. The Myrtles has seen generations live and die within its walls. Families came here seeking peace and prosperity. Many left behind unfinished stories. Over the years, the house earned a reputation that no one planned for. Guides call it one of the most haunted homes in America. From the outside, it looks calm, symmetrical, beautiful, and almost proud. But locals say that once you step past the front door, the air changes. The silence feels heavier. Photographs tilt slightly on their own. A faint smell of candle smoke lingers even when no flame burns. Visitors often speak of how still the house feels at dusk. There is no wind inside, yet the curtains move. The floors creak as if someone walks above, though no one does. Some say that after sunset, the Myrtles begins to breathe, slow, steady, and aware. History calls it a plantation home. Folklore calls it something else, a place that holds memories too strong to fade. And in its main hallway, covered by dust and reflection, there's a mirror that many refuse to stand before. They say it shows faces that do not belong to the living. No one can say for certain when the stories began. Some believe the house absorbed them over time, the deaths, the secrets, the grief. Others think they were always here, waiting for someone to listen. For now, it remains what it has always been. A southern home standing beneath the moss, carrying the weight of everything it has witnessed. And this is where our story begins. The story of the Myrtles Plantation begins with one man, General David Bradford. In 1794, Bradford fled Pennsylvania. He had been a leader in the Whiskey Rebellion, a violent protest against a federal tax on distilled spirits. The government branded him a traitor. When the rebellion collapsed, he escaped south before the authorities could reach him. Bradford travelled down the Ohio and Mississippi rivers until he arrived in Louisiana. At the time, this region was still part of Spanish West Florida, a lawless stretch of swampland and riverfront settlements. Here, in 1796, he built a home on a gentle rise above the Mississippi. It would become known as the Myrtles Plantation. He called it Laurel Grove. It was not grand at first, a modest wooden house surrounded by sugarcane fields. The nearest neighbour was miles away. The air was heavy with insects and mist. For a man hiding from the government, it was the perfect refuge. Local records show that Bradford lived quietly here for several years. He opened trade with passing riverboats, and eventually his family joined him after President John Adams issued a pardon. By then, Bradford had already begun to expand his home, adding long verandas, French doors, and the familiar white columns that define it today. He died in 1808. The exact cause is uncertain. His grave lies somewhere on the property, unmarked, as was common for that time. After his death, his daughter Sarah Matilda Bradford inherited the house. She and her husband, Ruffin Sterling, would transform the plantation into one of the most prosperous estates in the region. From these simple beginnings, the house began to change. What started as a hiding place became a symbol of Southern wealth and, in time, of Southern tragedy. Even in its earliest years, neighbours claimed that something about the land felt different. Stories from that period mention unexplained sounds in the fields at night, a rhythmic tapping, like footsteps on wood. Workers sometimes refused to enter certain rooms after dark. There is no written record of these early accounts, but the stories persisted. They passed from one generation to another, told quietly, as if the house had inherited its own memory. 2 centuries later, visitors still walk through the same rooms where Bradford once sought peace. The floorboards are the same. The air still holds the scent of old wood and damp earth. The difference is that now people come not to hide, but to listen. After General David Bradford's death, the Myrtles Plantation passed to his daughter, Sarah Matilda Bradford, and her husband, Ruffin Grace Sterling. Sterling was a wealthy lawyer and planter, part of the new generation shaping Louisiana's economy before the Civil War. Under his ownership, the Myrtles changed from a quiet refuge into a symbol of the Southern elite. Historical records show that by the 1830s, Sterling had doubled the size of the house. He added a 30-foot veranda running the full length of the front facade, hand-carved balustrades, and imported mirrors and chandeliers from France. The home's French Creole design blended elegance with the humidity of the deep south. Tall windows for airflow, thick brick walls to hold the cool. Locals called it the Jewel of St. Francisville. Visitors described it as a mansion surrounded by gardens, magnolia trees, and cane fields stretching toward the river. The plantation covered over 600 acres at its height, operated by dozens of enslaved workers. But even as wealth filled the house, so did tragedy. Death was a constant presence in the antebellum South. Fever, accidents, and childbirth took lives without warning. Parish records list several children of the Sterling family who died before the age of 10. Their graves are said to remain somewhere behind the main house, though only a few headstones still bear names. By the early 1850s, the Sterling success began to fade. The price of sugar dropped. Epidemics swept through the region. When Ruffin Sterling died in 1854, his wife and surviving children struggled to keep the estate running. The war years that followed would all but end its prosperity. During the Civil War, the Myrtles reportedly served as a camp for Confederate soldiers. Some accounts claim that wounded men were treated in the house's side rooms, though no official military documents confirm this. Guests on modern tours sometimes report the sound of boots and muffled voices coming from those same rooms after dark. When the war ended, the Sterlings lost much of their land. The property changed hands multiple times, often between relatives. Furniture was sold off, then returned, then replaced again. Yet the house itself, with its veranda, its oaks, and its mirrors, remained almost untouched. What survived from that era are the small details: initials carved into window frames, water stains where lamps once stood, faint outlines of portraits removed long ago. The Myrtles is not just an old home, it is a record of ambition, loss, and the silence that followed both. And as generations passed, the stories began to shift. The tragedies that had once been whispered as history became something else. The locals started to call them hauntings. The most persistent story connected to the Myrtles Plantation is the death of William Drew Winter. He was the son-in-law of Sarah Matilda Sterling, a lawyer by trade, born in Louisiana in 1820. After the Civil War, he and his wife, Sarah, moved back into the house to restore what was left of the family estate. On a cold January evening in 1871, a man on horseback approached the front gate. He called for Winter by name. Moments later, a gunshot was heard. Neighbours found William Winter collapsed near the veranda. According to family accounts, he was still alive when they carried him inside. Bleeding heavily, he tried to climb the staircase to reach his wife, who was waiting on the second floor. He made it partway up before collapsing. He died there, halfway between floors. That is the historical record, or at least the part that can be verified. But the story did not end there. Local legend claims that William Winter's final moments were far more dramatic. In this version, he managed to pull himself up all 17 steps before his body gave out. People say that every night, around the same hour, the sound of those last footsteps echoes through the house, slow, uneven, climbing halfway and stopping. Visitors on evening tours sometimes pause near the main staircase. The guides lower their voices. They tell guests to listen. When the air is still, some swear they hear faint steps moving up the stairs. Others report hearing them only once, just as the guide finishes the story. There is no proof that the haunting is real. There is also no proof that it is not. The staircase itself remains unchanged. The wooden steps are smooth from 2 centuries of use. A brass lamp hangs overhead, its light dull and yellow. In the daytime, the spot looks ordinary, just another piece of the house's architecture. But after dark, when the visitors are gone, the house grows quiet. The boards settle. And in that quiet, a single sound, one step, can feel like memory returning. Records show that after Winter's death, the property passed again between several owners. The family eventually left St. Francisville. The Myrtles fell into disrepair, then was slowly restored in the 20th century. Yet no matter how many times the house is repaired, the story of the staircase remains the same. Tour guides tell it as part of every visit. Writers include it in every article. Paranormal investigators list it among their verified residual hauntings. Some treat it as folklore, others treat it as evidence. Either way, it has become inseparable from the house itself, a sound that belongs to its history, repeating without a body to make it. And for those who have heard it once is enough. Among all the stories told about the Myrtles Plantation, none is repeated more often than the story of Chloe. Her name appears in travel guides, ghost tours, and local brochures. To many visitors, she is the face of the haunting. But like most legends, her story begins with uncertainty. There are several versions. The most common says that Chloe was an enslaved woman who worked in the house during the 1800s. She was assigned to domestic duties, caring for the family and serving food in the dining room. In this version, her life changed after she was caught eavesdropping on a private conversation. The master of the house, often identified as Clark Woodruff, ordered her ear cut off as punishment. After that, Chloe began wearing a green turban to hide the scar. Some say she planned revenge. Others say she only wanted forgiveness. According to the story, Chloe baked a birthday cake for the family, one laced with the crushed leaves of the oleander plant, a natural poison. She hoped that by making them mildly ill, she could then nurse them back to health and regain her position. But the plan failed. Within hours, 2 children and their mother were dead. When the other enslaved workers discovered what she had done, they feared collective punishment. They dragged Chloe to a nearby tree, hanged her, and threw her body into the river. That is the legend most visitors hear. It is retold every night in the glow of lanterns during the plantation's ghost tours. But historians note that there is no record of a woman named Chloe in any of the property's slave inventories. The dates also conflict. Clark Woodruff lived at the Myrtles decades before some of the events the story describes. Parish death records from that period list no simultaneous deaths in the family. Still, the story survives and grows. In some versions, Chloe was not seeking revenge, but protecting the children from another threat. In others, she was a housemaid wrongly accused and punished for something she never did. What remains constant is the image, a woman in a green turban moving silently through the halls. Tourists claim to have photographed her figure reflected in the glass of the old hallway mirror. The image, first captured in the 1990s, shows what looks like a faint outline of a woman standing between 2 buildings. The photograph has been examined many times. No one has proved it authentic. No one has disproved it either. Some visitors describe smelling the faint scent of jasmine, said to mark her presence. Others report hearing the creak of footsteps, followed by the rustle of fabric, as if someone in long skirts had brushed past. The guides do not argue. They simply say, "That's Chloe," and move on. It may be that she never existed, or perhaps she did, and the records that could confirm her life were never written, or were lost like so many others from that time. Either way, the story of Chloe has become part of the Myrtles' identity. Fact or fiction, she is now one of its permanent residents, a figure shaped by history, tragedy, and the imagination of those who still walk these rooms in the dark. In the main hallway of the Myrtles Plantation hangs a large, framed mirror. It has been there for more than a century. Visitors walk past it on their way to the dining room, often without noticing its age. The glass slightly clouded, the frame dark with time. But for many who know the stories, this mirror is not just a piece of furniture, it is the heart of the haunting. According to local legend, the mirror holds the spirits of those who died inside the house. When a member of a household died, Southern tradition required that all mirrors be covered in black cloth. It was believed that if a mirror remained uncovered, the soul of the deceased might become trapped within the reflection, unable to move on. When tragedy struck at the Myrtles, whether through accident, illness, or murder, someone, the story says, forgot to cover this particular mirror. Over time, its glass became more than reflective. It became a witness. Employees and guests have reported seeing handprints pressed from the inside of the glass. They describe them as faint, almost child-sized, smudges that never wipe clean. Photographs exist, taken by tourists, investigators, and staff, showing pale impressions that seem to appear and fade again within days. Others describe seeing the shape of a woman in a turban standing just behind their reflection. She never moves, and when they turn around, no one is there. The image matches the popular description of Chloe, though the story of the mirror predates her legend. Housekeepers claim that the mirror sometimes fogs over from within, even when the air is cool and dry. During restoration work in the 1970s, workers attempted to remove and clean the glass. They found that some marks were between layers, sealed inside, suggesting the stains were not on the surface at all. No formal investigation has confirmed any paranormal evidence. Still, the mirror remains a focus for ghost hunters and documentary crews. Infrared photographs, electromagnetic readings, and night vision recordings have all been attempted. None have explained the handprints or the shadows. For the owners, the mirror is now a permanent part of the tour. It stands in the same hallway where many of the house's deaths were said to occur. Guides tell guests to look closely, but not too long. They say the longer you stare, the more likely you are to see something move behind the glass, a flicker of light, a figure, or a reflection that does not belong to you. Most visitors walk away with nothing but a story. A few walk away convinced that someone or something was looking back. Whether it holds spirits or only stains of age, the mirror has become a symbol of the Myrtles Plantation itself. A surface that shows us the past, but not the whole of it. A reminder that in some places, history does not fade. It only looks back. Every house with a history collects stories. At the Myrtles Plantation, those stories have never stopped. In interviews recorded over the past 50 years, employees, guides, and guests have described unusual experiences. The accounts differ in detail, but share the same tone: calm, certain, and without exaggeration. Most begin with a sound. A tour guide named Mary, who worked at the Myrtles in the 1980s, recalled closing the house for the night. She turned off the lights and started toward the door. Halfway down the hallway, she heard footsteps moving behind her, slow, deliberate, coming down the main staircase. She stopped. The sound stopped too. When she turned around, the stairs were empty. Another guide, Thomas, reported hearing a piano playing in the front parlour. He believed it was a visitor until he realised the room had been locked for the evening. When he unlocked the door, the piano keys were still moving slightly, as if touched by a passing hand. The instrument has no automatic mechanism. Guests staying overnight in the upstairs rooms have described hearing children laughing in the courtyard after midnight. The sound lasts only a few seconds. One guest, writing in a visitor log from 2004, noted, "It wasn't frightening, just out of place, like laughter from a different time." A woman from Texas, who stayed at the plantation in 2012, told staff she woke in the night to the smell of flowers. No arrangements had been placed in her room. The scent, heavy, sweet and unmistakable, faded within moments. Locals associate the smell with jasmine, a flower often linked to the story of Chloe. Paranormal investigators have spent nights in the house using cameras and audio recorders. They have captured faint knocks, whispers, and temperature drops, none of which prove anything, but all of which keep the story alive. In one recording, a low female voice can be heard saying a single word: "Wait." The sound lasts less than a second. No one has confirmed who or what produced it. The current staff rarely make claims. They prefer to let visitors decide for themselves. As one manager explained, "This house is old. It makes sounds. But sometimes what you hear doesn't come from the wood." During quiet tours, when only a few guests are present, guides often pause near the staircase or the old dining room mirror. They tell the known history, names, dates, events, and then they fall silent. That silence has become part of the experience. In it, people report hearing faint movement, soft breathing, or the click of a latch somewhere upstairs. No one is ever certain what they heard, but nearly everyone agrees on one thing: the house never feels empty. the Myrtles Plantation remains open to the public. It functions as both a museum and a bed and breakfast. Visitors sleep in rooms where entire families once lived and died. Each night, some leave their doors cracked open, unable to rest in complete darkness. In the morning, they write short notes in the guest book. Polite, simple, and careful. Beautiful stay. Peaceful. But the halls are never quiet. To understand why the Myrtles Plantation carries so many stories, one must understand Louisiana itself. This is a land shaped by belief, French Catholic, African spiritual, and native reverence for the unseen. Here, faith and superstition have never been opposites. They have always shared the same breath. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Louisiana was home to a unique culture, Creole society, where languages, religions, and customs blended into something that existed nowhere else in America. Prayers and charms often lived side by side. The same families who attended Mass on Sundays might keep a talisman buried beneath the doorstep for protection. Stories of ghosts were not simply entertainment. They were a way to explain the persistence of memory. In a region built on cycles of birth, flood, and loss, people learned that the past does not stay buried. The land remembers. And the houses, built on that land, remember too. Within Creole belief, the soul is not bound by distance. It can linger near the place of death, or return to protect loved ones, or remain until a final task is done. This idea made hauntings less about terror and more about continuity. The living and the dead existing in parallel, separated only by attention. The Myrtles Plantation fits naturally into that framework. Its age, its tragedies, and its setting make it a vessel for stories. The moss-hung trees, the damp air, the candlelight flickering through glass, all of it creates the feeling that the border between worlds here is thinner. Visitors sense it without being told. Over time, as each new generation of owners took residence, they added their own layer of belief. Catholic rituals mixed with folk prayers. Enslaved Africans brought elements of West African cosmology. The understanding that spirits can inhabit not only places, but also objects, like mirrors or doors. Native people who once lived on this land believed the swamp itself was alive. That each mist rising from the water carried the breath of those who came before. To outsiders, these might sound like myths. To those born here, they are part of identity. When a visitor hears footsteps at the Myrtles, a skeptic might call it old wood. A believer might call it a soul still walking its path. In Louisiana, both explanations can be true. The blending of history and folklore is what gives the region its distinctive tone. Not horror in the cinematic sense, but a quiet acceptance that the past is never truly gone. It lingers in sound, in scent, in the way a mirror holds light a fraction too long. And that is why, long after the Sterlings and Winters and Chloes have faded from record, their stories remain. Not because of proof, but because of belief. The oldest force in the South. Today, the Myrtles Plantation stands much as it has for more than 2 centuries. Its white columns remain, the wide porches still shaded by the same oaks. The air carries the same weight, humid, fragrant, and slow. But the world around it has changed. The house is now both museum and inn. Visitors can walk through its rooms during the day and spend the night where generations once lived, worked, and died. Each year, thousands come to St. Francisville, drawn not by luxury or comfort, but by curiosity. The Myrtles has been featured in documentaries, television specials, and countless online videos. Unsolved mysteries, filmed here in the 1990s. So did Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and independent crews from Europe and Japan. Every team came hoping to capture something. A sound, a shadow, a fragment of proof. None left empty-handed, though none left with certainty either. In interviews, producers often describe the same feeling, a heaviness in the air, like static before a storm. Some recorded unexplained movements, a rocking chair shifting, a curtain stirring. Others reported sudden drops in temperature localized to a single room. These moments rarely appear on camera. They happen between takes, when the house is quiet and no one is performing. Local staff have grown used to it. They speak of the phenomena with the same tone used to discuss the weather. One caretaker told a reporter in 2015, "It's not about proving anything. It's about respect. This house has seen too much to ever be empty." For guests, the experience varies. Some spend peaceful nights, hearing nothing but the crickets outside. Others wake suddenly around 3 in the morning, the so-called dead hour, to the sound of footsteps or whispers near the hall. A few leave in the middle of the night, unable to stay until dawn. Their names are still in the guest book. Modern photographs of the mirror continue to appear online. Each claims to show something, a blur, a shape, a suggestion. Skeptics call them reflections of light. Believers see faces. The house never argues. Around it, the small town of St. Francisville has learned to coexist with its legend. The residents know the stories by heart. They hear the tour buses pass each weekend, and they smile when asked for directions. For them, the Myrtles is part of the landscape, not a spectacle, but a neighbour that breathes a little differently. In recent years, restoration work has focused on preserving the house's original structure, repairing old wood, reinforcing foundations, and cataloguing artifacts. Yet the workers say the most fragile thing in the house cannot be restored: the atmosphere. It hangs in the rooms like a faint vibration, the residue of every story told and retold. At night, when the last lights go out and the gate is locked, the Myrtles returns to silence. The cameras are gone, the guests asleep. Only the crickets and the river keep their rhythm, and somewhere inside, beneath the low hum of the air, the past continues to turn, quietly, as it always has. The Myrtles Plantation has survived wars, storms, and the slow decay of time. It has outlived the families who built it, the workers who sustained it, and the guests who came seeking peace or answers. Through it all, the house has remained, watching, listening, remembering. When the morning sun passes through the tall windows, the rooms look ordinary. Light catches the edges of the wooden banisters and settles in the dust that hangs in the air. It is quiet then. But even in daylight, there is a feeling that the house is not just old, it is aware. Every board, every nail holds a memory. The laughter of children who never grew old, the echo of boots on the stairs, the faint trace of voices carried by air that has never left these walls. None of it demands belief, yet none of it disappears. People visit the Myrtles for different reasons. Some come because they love history, some because they want to see a ghost. Most leave with something they did not expect, not fear, but a quiet respect for the endurance of the past. A house like this becomes more than a structure. It becomes a vessel. Each story told within it adds another layer, fact, legend, rumour, until truth and myth are indistinguishable. What remains is the feeling, and the feeling is what survives. Late at night, when the air grows still and the Spanish moss hangs motionless, the Myrtles seems to breathe again. The sound of insects fades. The lights flicker once and settle, and if you stand very still in the center hallway, facing the old mirror, you may see nothing at all, or you may see a reflection that hesitates, a shape too slow to be your own. Some say the spirits trapped here are restless. Others say they are simply remembered too clearly to fade. Either way, the house keeps them. It has for more than 200 years. In Louisiana, the line between memory and haunting is thin. The people who live here understand that what lingers is not always meant to frighten. Sometimes it is just history refusing to end. The Myrtles Plantation stands beneath the same oak trees that shaded it in 1796. The moss still drips from the branches, the air still smells of earth and rain, and the mirror, dark, silent, waiting, still hangs where it always has, holding the weight of all that came before. The guides lock the doors each night and leave the lights low. As they walk away, they glance once over their shoulders, not out of fear, but out of acknowledgement, because here, at the edge of the river, in a house that does not forget, the past is not gone. It's only quiet.